Canada, a vast expanse of majestic landscapes stretching from the rugged Atlantic coast to the serene Pacific shores, and its dense forests, crystalline lakes, and towering mountains tell a story of natural grandeur, while its bustling cities echo with tales of innovation and prosperity. Yet, beneath this veneer of natural beauty and modernity lies a hidden history, one woven by a select few who have shaped the nation's destiny through unparalleled wealth and influence. Throughout Canadian history, from the fur trade era to the Industrial Revolution and into the digital age, certain families have not only amassed fortunes, they have steered the cultural and economic currents of the Great North. Today, we unveil this intricate web of family connections, power plays, and visionary pursuits that define these titans of Canadian society, revealing how a few key lineages' wealth continues to sculpt the country's future. When you think of Canada, you probably imagine overly nice conversations, endless hockey rinks, and lush landscapes that take the breath away faster than a Canadian wind gust. Known for its snowy winters, awkward level politeness, and majestic moose sightings, Canada embodies a sense of rustic charm and tranquility. But what if we were to tell you that alongside these charming stereotypes, there are some big maple leaf-sized bucks being thrown around up north? Indeed, the Thompsons, the richest family in Canada, bar none, and one of the wealthiest in the world, have come a long way from their humble beginnings as poor Scottish farmers. More than just rich people, they've worked their way into the British aristocracy, owning the media conglomerate Thomson Reuters, and wielding enormous influence over Canada's economic and cultural landscapes. And yet, despite their staggering fortune, the Thompsons have mastered the art of staying out of the spotlight, avoiding the typical trappings of the wealthy elite. In today's episode of Old Money Luxury, we'll dive into their enigmatic world, exploring the rags to riches saga of a family who continue to shape Canada's future from the shadows, as we describe the Thompsons, the secretive family who controls Canada. The Thompson family, one of the wealthiest families in the world and the absolute richest in Canada, sit pretty atop a mountain of cash that's roughly $61.3 billion high. And as of January 2024, this dazzling figure lands them in the 21st spot on Forbes' Real-Time Billionaires list, a club where money talks and where the Thompsons have a lot to say. Now, their cash cow is the Woodbridge Company, the heavyweight parent of media colossus Thomson Reuters, and what began as Roy Thomson's quaint little radio station in 1930s Ontario has morphed into a global Goliath in news, information, and tech services. But the Thompsons aren't ones to rest on their media laurels, and their investment portfolio is a smorgasbord of ventures. For example, current family patriarch David Thompson, the third Baron Thompson of Fleet, runs Morgan Bay Capital, a hedge fund that makes the family's money work as hard as they do. But their empire stretches even further into sports and entertainment via True North Sports and Entertainment, proud owners of the Winnipeg Jets and the Canada Life Centre. You see, David took the reins after his father Kenneth Thompson's death in 2006, and he steered the family's ship into ever-expanding waters with a heady mix of strategic genius and a love for flying under the radar. Osmington Incorporated, David's real estate baby, is no slouch either. The firm's commercial property investments have paid off handsomely, including a $336 million stake sale in retail properties to the Canada Pension Plan in 2010. But the Thompsons are more than financial wizards. They're art connoisseurs par excellence, and their collection is the stuff of dreams, with David amassing masterpieces by Rembrandt, J.M.W. Turner, and John Constable. In fact, his stash of Constable's works is reportedly the largest in the world. But what is all that canvas if you can't stash it up in a lavish estate? And David's mammoth-sized Toronto pad in the swanky Rosedale neighbourhood is old money elegance at its finest. This lavish residence, expanded to house his priceless art collection, even boasts an underground gallery. And the property, valued at several $1 million, is just one gem in their glittering private real estate portfolio scattered across North America and Europe. However, despite their mountainous wealth, The Thomson family manages to keep a surprisingly low profile. David, in particular, is an elusive figure, dodging the spotlight and keeping interviews at bay. This air of mystery only adds to the allure of their immense fortune, making their story a captivating saga of success and secrecy. With that said, join us as we play detective on this enigmatic old money dynasty and see what we can find as to their route to wealth in the next chapter. The ancestors of what would become Canada's richest family, and British aristocrats no less, were, believe it or not, small Scottish tenant farmers, toiling on the estates of the Dukes of Buccleuch at Bowness in the parish of Westerkirk, Dumfriesshire, Scotland. Therefore, before the Canadian riches made it rain, the Thomson family's lives were marked by the rhythms of the land, the cycle of seasons, and the whispers of Highland winds. And then, in 1773, Archibald Thomson, driven by the lure of new opportunities and the weight of economic hardship, embarked on a bold journey from Westerkirk to Canada, then British North America. This migration was part of a larger exodus, as many Scots sought refuge from the harsh agricultural reforms and economic pressures of the time, hoping to find prosperity across the Atlantic. Archibald's voyage led him to Quebec, where he married Elizabeth Mackay, and together they ventured further into the wilds of Upper Canada. Yet their hearts remained tied to the rugged landscapes of their homeland. In fact, Archibald's brother, David Thomson, etched his name into history by becoming the very first European settler of Scarborough, Ontario. The significance of this milestone cannot be overstated, as Scarborough is one of the most well-known areas in the province and includes numerous landmarks, including the Toronto Zoo, Rouge Park, and the Scarborough Bluffs. Now, the first true family patriarch who helped guide the Thomson name to wealth was Roy Herbert Thomson, born on the 5th of June 1894 in Toronto, Ontario. And his father, Herbert Thomson, a telegraphist turned barber, and his mother, Alice Maud, of English descent, nurtured their family in a humble abode at 32 Monteith Street. And though Roy's early education was cut short when he left school at 14, his year at Mr. Eliot's Business College, where he studied bookkeeping, ignited a spark for commerce within him. His first foray into business came through assisting his affluent Aunt Hyslop, who dealt in second mortgages, and as she was impressed by his meticulous bookkeeping, she entrusted him with greater responsibilities, leading him to co-invest in mortgages by the age of 15, thus beginning his lifelong obsession with wealth accumulation. But the 1920s and 1930s were a tumultuous period for Thomson. At 24, he attempted farming in Manitoba, only to lose most of his capital. Undeterred, he ventured into the auto parts business at 30, facing initial failure due to liquidity issues. Soon, his second attempt saw moderate success, though it didn't bring significant rewards. These early failures, however, only fueled his determination. In the early 1930s, Thomson's entrepreneurial spirit found fertile ground in the radio business. Selling radios in Northern Ontario, he perceived a gap in the market. His customers needed more content. In 1931, he established his own radio station, CFCH, in North Bay, Ontario, and this venture turned out to be a resounding success, boosting his radio sales and generating advertising revenue. Emboldened, he expanded his radio operations, opening a second station in Timmins in 1933. Thomson's pivotal move into the newspaper industry came in 1934, when he acquired the struggling Timmins Daily Press for a down payment of $200. Transforming it from a weekly to a daily paper, he began his expansion into media. Over the next decade, he acquired more radio stations and newspapers, steadily building his media empire. And by the end of the 1940s, Thomson's empire encompassed 19 newspapers, and he held the presidency of the Canadian Daily Newspaper Publishers Association. And his strategy was both simple and effective, acquiring small-town newspapers that enjoyed monopolistic positions in their local markets, ensuring a steady stream of advertising revenue. Thomson's ambitions were not confined to Canada. In 1952, he purchased The Scotsman, a prestigious Edinburgh newspaper, marking his entry into the British media market. 5 years later, he secured the commercial television franchise for Central Scotland, launching Scottish Television. which he famously described as a license to print money due to its profitability. By the late 1950s, his media holdings spanned Canada, the United States and the United Kingdom. And despite his immense success, Roy Thomson was known for his humility and unpretentious lifestyle. He shunned ostentatious displays of wealth, often using public transportation and focusing on the commercial aspects of his businesses with a meticulous eye. In 1964, Roy Thomson's contributions to the media industry were formally recognized with the title of Baron Thomson of Fleet, cementing his status as a media magnate and fulfilling his long-held aspiration to join the ranks of British peerage. Little did he know, however, that his successes in business and social status were just the beginning of a family empire that would do more than just sell a few newspapers and receive a fancy title. Roy's son and heir apparent, Kenneth Roy Thomson, entered the world on the 1st of September 1923 in Toronto. Although Kenneth's formative years unfolded across Toronto, Ottawa and North Bay, mirroring the ebb and flow of his father's expanding business ventures. By 1937, the family had returned to Toronto, and young Kenneth found himself enrolled at the esteemed Upper Canada College, where he would receive an education that would serve as a springboard into his future endeavours. However, the outbreak of World War II interrupted Kenneth's academic pursuits, and at the tender age of 19, he joined the Royal Canadian Air Force in December 1942. His role as an instrument mechanic and later as an editor for the RCAF magazine Wings Abroad, stationed in England, hinted at a future intertwined with journalism and media. After the war, Kenneth pursued higher education with vigour, earning a master's degree in law from St John's College, University of Cambridge. And with his studies completed, he returned to Canada in 1947, eager to dive into his father's burgeoning business. Starting humbly as a reporter for the family's Timmins Daily Press, Kenneth's journey through the ranks was one of hands-on learning and relentless determination. After that, for 5 years, Kenneth honed his skills at the Galt Reporter, taking on roles from advertising salesman to general manager. These years provided a comprehensive understanding of the newspaper industry, knowledge that would later prove indispensable. And then, in 1953, Kenneth took the helm of Thomson Newspapers, overseeing Canadian and American operations from Toronto. His personal life also blossomed during this period. He married model Nora Marilyn Lavis in 1956, and the couple welcomed 3 children, David, Peter and Leslie, later known as Taylor. And the Thomson Empire's global reach expanded under Kenneth's stewardship. In 1966, following his father's acquisition of the Times newspaper in London, Kenneth relocated to England. By 1968, he was chairman of Times Newspapers Limited, immersing himself in the complexities of international media management. Kenneth returned to Toronto in 1970 and became joint chairman of the Thomson Organisation with his father in 1971. This transition of power was a prelude to his full control of the family business upon Roy Thomson's death in 1976. And as the second Baron Thomson of Fleet, Kenneth inherited a media conglomerate valued at approximately $500 million, with diverse interests spanning newspapers, television, travel and oil. And Kenneth's leadership marked a strategic pivot for the Thomson Corporation. He refocused the company's efforts on North America, selling the British newspaper assets, including the Times and the Sunday Times, to Rupert Murdoch in 1981, amidst a turbulent labour dispute. This divestment signalled a shift towards specialised information services and electronic publishing. Major acquisitions, such as Wadsworth Textbook Publishing in 1978 and legal publisher West Publishing in 1996, exemplified this new direction. By the dawn of the 21st century, the Thomson Corporation had evolved into a digital media and information powerhouse, leaving its traditional newspaper roots behind. Under Kenneth's astute guidance, the company's value soared from $500 million in 1976 to a staggering $29.3 billion by 2006. And the Thomson family's wealth grew in tandem, with their stake valued at over $19 billion, positioning Kenneth among the world's wealthiest individuals. And yet, despite his monumental success, Kenneth maintained an unassuming lifestyle just like his father. Known for his frugality, he often shunned luxuries, preferring to shop for his groceries, drive himself, and could even be seen riding the London Underground, the public subway, like any other person. And Kenneth's family life was a blend of affluence and caution as well. He and Nora Marilyn Lavis raised their children in an environment steeped in privacy and discretion, with Kenneth keenly aware of the potential pitfalls of inherited wealth and instilled a sense of responsibility and prudence in his offspring. Now, Kenneth's later years were marked by significant philanthropy. His most notable contribution was a $370 million donation of his art collection and funds to the Art Gallery of Ontario in 2002, facilitating a major renovation by architect Frank Gehry. And even in his final years, Kenneth remained actively involved in the family's business through the private holding company Woodbridge. His sudden death in 2006 at the age of 82 brought an end to an era for the Thompson dynasty, leaving a legacy of profound influence and transformation in the global media landscape. But Kenneth had shared a close bond with his eldest son, David, whom he began grooming from a young age to eventually take over the family business. This plan was part of a vision laid out decades earlier by first family patriarch, the aforementioned Roy Thompson. Thus, when Kenneth Thompson passed away in June 2006, control of the family fortune seamlessly transitioned to David. Roy Thompson had written in his 1975 autobiography, "David, my grandson, will have to take his part in the running of the organization, and David's son too." He further emphasized, "With the fortune that we will leave to them go also responsibilities. These Thompson boys that come after Ken are not going to be able, even if they want to shrug off these responsibilities." The third-generation patriarch, David Kenneth Roy Thompson, was born on the 12th of June 1957 in Toronto. By then, quite naturally, his family was one of immense prestige and influence, with his brother Peter Thompson pursuing a path of speed and adrenaline as a race car driver, and his sister Taylor Thompson carving her own distinct path. David's early years were marked by an education that set the foundation for his future endeavours, and he attended Upper Canada College and the Hall School, institutions known for their rigorous academic standards. In 1978, he completed his studies at Selwyn College, Cambridge, earning a Bachelor of Arts in History. Meanwhile, Peter Thompson's journey took a different route, no pun intended, and Peter's passion for auto racing was evident from a young age. After completing his education at Royal St. George's College, he dabbled in photography through unpaid internships at local newspapers, opportunities facilitated by his father, Ken Thompson. Yet the call of the racetrack was too strong to ignore. In 1986, Peter began his rally racing career, swiftly making a name for himself in the sport, including several national championship wins. Now, David's foray into the family business began in the 1990s, with him starting as a junior associate at MacLeod Young Weir in Toronto, a move that proved to be a stepping stone that led to various roles within the Thompson family's extensive enterprises. Managing the Bay store at Cloverdale Mall in Etobicoke, and later serving as president of Zellers, were pivotal roles that honed his business acumen. However, David sought to carve his own path and founded Osmington Incorporated, a real estate firm that operated independently of the Thompson empire. Osmington focused on acquiring and managing commercial real estate assets for institutional shareholders, including the Thompson family. Osmington's portfolio also boasted a partnership in True North Sports and Entertainment, owning the NHL's Winnipeg Jets and the Canada Life Centre in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Additionally, Osmington took on the ambitious project of redeveloping the retail space of Toronto's Union Station and planned to introduce the Shake Shack fast food chain to Canada with 35 outlets. Inheriting the title of Third Baron Thompson of Fleet, David assumed the mantle of family patriarch following his father's passing in 2006. As chairman of Thompson Corporation, he led the company through a significant merger with Reuters in 2008, forming Thomson Reuters, a global information services powerhouse. Despite his prominent role, David's relationship with the family business was fraught with frustration. He often expressed a desire to shift focus toward his passions in art and real estate, a sentiment that was perhaps intensified by the intense media scrutiny surrounding his personal life. One such controversy erupted in 2006 during his divorce from Lori Ludwig. Their tumultuous relationship and subsequent legal battle captivated the public, revealing allegations of harassment and intimidation. And Ludwig claimed that David and his agents had engaged in intrusive behavior, including unauthorized entry into their home and removal of personal items. The case was set to establish new precedents for extraordinary childcare expenses in Canada, given its high-profile nature and substantial financial implications. David's financial disclosures during the divorce also painted a picture of a complex and intricate corporate structure designed to manage the family's vast wealth. Despite his substantial income, which included a monthly salary exceeding $100,000 and significant trust income, David reported a monthly budget deficit. Ludwig's lawyer criticized the lack of transparency in David's financial disclosures, suggesting that the true extent of his wealth was being concealed. This opacity and the elaborate financial arrangements often became focal points of contention in legal disputes involving the Thompson family. Another significant legal entanglement ensnared Taylor Thompson, David's sister, in a high-profile espionage saga. In 2002, Taylor was implicated in a notorious case involving Anthony Pellicano, a disreputable Los Angeles private investigator, amidst her custody battle with Michael Kolesa, the father of her child. Though she denied these allegations, the case cast a shadow over the family, revealing the extreme measures they would undertake to safeguard their privacy and interests. Throughout these controversies, the Thompson family tried to uphold a stringent code of privacy, employing extraordinary measures to shield their personal lives from the public gaze. Court documents were sealed, and employees were bound by confidentiality agreements. Yet despite these efforts, their legal and financial turmoils occasionally seeped into the public sphere, offering a rare glimpse into the lives of one of Canada's most enigmatic and influential families. These controversies highlighted the delicate balancing act the Thompsons faced, juggling their vast wealth and power with an unrelenting desire for privacy and control over their public image. Therefore, the Thompson family, a towering presence in Canada's social and economic landscape, has long been a magnet for both fascination and scrutiny. On a crisp autumn day in 1958, the Seagram building opens its doors, instantly captivating Park Avenue. This modernist masterpiece, designed by Mies van der Rohe and Philip Johnson, stands as a marvel with its sleek lines and bronze-tinted facade. Crowds gather, their eyes wide with awe, as sunlight reflects off the towering structure, giving it an almost ethereal glow. Its innovative recessed placement, set back from the street, creates a striking plaza that enhances its grandeur. This thoughtful design not only sets a new architectural precedent, but also influences the future of skyscraper construction around the world, emphasizing open space and urban integration. And yet, as people walk by admiring the building's grandeur, few realize the story behind its creation. The Seagram building is the brainchild of the Bronfman family, the multi-billion-dollar old-money Canadian dynasty that started as poor farmers and within just a few short generations became one of North America's wealthiest and most powerful lineages. In today's episode of Old Money Luxury, we'll tell their insane rags to riches saga, as they first take over the North America alcohol industry with unmatched finesse, before expanding their empire to entertainment, grabbing the reins of power in the music industry, all the way to their controversial connections to cults, Jeffrey Epstein, and international spy organizations, as we describe, the Bronfmans, the secret wealthy family that owns Canada. As of 2024, the Bronfman family of Canada continues to sit pretty atop a mountain of cash, much like their own version of the Canadian Rockies. And their vast wealth originates from the Seagram Company, an alcohol distillery and household name of drinking that you're probably already aware of, that found its footing during America's dry spell, Prohibition. Indeed, this company didn't just survive, it thrived, turning into a global spirits empire that significantly fattened the family's wallet. Now, When the Bronfmans waved goodbye to Seagram, selling it to Vivendi in 2000 for a staggering $34 billion US, they didn't just boost their bank accounts, they rocketed into the financial stratosphere. Not content to rest on their laurels, the family diversified faster than a billionaire at a tax advice seminar, branching into real estate, the music industry, and tech, among other industries. And at the helm of this filthy rich empire is Charles Bronfman, the patriarch with a net worth of $2.5 billion US as of 2023. But Charles didn't just ride the Seagram wave until its sail. He also dipped his toes into philanthropic waters, co-founding Taglit Birthright Israel. You know, the program that encourages and even pays Jews from across the diaspora to visit to Israel, and splashing cash on cultural and educational causes across Canada, the US, and Israel. Truly, Charles is the philanthropic face that launched 1,000 tax deductions. Then there's Edgar Bronfman Jr., the prodigal son who spun his part of the family fortune into a media and entertainment career. As the former CEO of Warner Music Group from 2004 to 2011, Edgar redefined the music industry as he helped guide music into the streaming era. Under his watch, WMG embraced digital platforms and tweaked its artist relationships, for better or worse, ensuring the music didn't stop when the market shifted. He then orchestrated a graceful exit, selling WMG to Access Industries for a cool $3.3 billion in 2011. Not to be outdone by his elders, Benjamin Bronfman, Edgar Jr.'s son, tuned into his own entrepreneurial and musical gifts. With a net worth of $100 million, Benjamin isn't just sitting on his surname, he's producing hits. His notable creds include co-producing Kanye West's Monster and contributing to the controversial song New Slaves, snagging him a Grammy nod. But the Bronfmans also know a thing or two about luxury. And in 2008, thieves tested this knowledge by targeting the 22,000-square-foot mansion of one Paul and Judy Bronfman. The robbers made off with Stanley Cup rings and a cache of diamonds and gold, just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the hidden wealth of the family legacy. Not every Bronfman, however, has faced such misfortune, and Jeremy Bronfman, Edgar Sr.'s grandson, splurged on a $29 million Santa Monica estate in 2021. But this isn't just any pad. It's a 1920s Spanish colonial-style mansion featuring everything from a bocce court to a secret spa. Hidden from prying eyes, this estate offers privacy, luxury, and a few fountains for good measure. Because when you're a Bronfman, why not? Yet, if we turn back the clock a little more than a century, we would see the Bronfman family little more than struggling farmers as they tried to build a life in the new world. Let's head over to the next chapter to find out how this Canadian rags-to-riches tale began. The first family patriarch, and the one who would set the foundations for the Bronfman dynasty's unfathomable wealth, was one Samuel Bronfman, born in 1889 aboard a ship en route to Canada, emerging from the depths of the then Russian Empire. You see, Samuel and his parents were Jewish refugees escaping the brutal pogroms of Tsarist Russia. These pogroms were violent riots aimed at persecuting Jews, often with the support or indifference of local authorities, and consequently, fleeing this malevolent oppression, the Bronfmans immigrated to Wapella in Saskatchewan's district of Assiniboia before moving to Brandon, Manitoba. Now, the name Bronfman itself is closely associated with Jewish families, particularly of Russian Jewish and Romanian Jewish ancestry, and its actual meaning adds a shot of irony to the entire family history. It derives from the Yiddish word Bronfen, meaning liquor, vodka, or spirits, and is related to the German word Brandwein, which refers to, again ironically, distilled spirits. And the name originally meant the man who made or sold whiskey. Now, Samuel's parents, once prosperous in Tsarist Russia, arrived in Canada with their rabbi and two servants, and Yechiel Bronfman, Samuel's father, attempted to recreate his past success, but found tobacco farming incompatible with the harsh Canadian climate. To survive, Yechiel took on work as a labourer for the Canadian Northern Railway before securing a better job in a sawmill. Then, Yechiel and his sons turned to selling firewood and trading frozen whitefish to sustain themselves through the winters. Eventually they moved into trading horses, which led them into the hotel and bar business. And in 1903, the family purchased a hotel. With this, young Samuel, recognizing that alcohol sales were highly profitable, established himself as a liquor distributor. Thus, in 1924, Samuel founded the Distillers Corporation in Montreal, specializing in affordable whiskey. And during Prohibition in Canada, Samuel and his brothers sold mail-order liquor. Furthermore, during this public banning of alcohol use, Samuel cleverly navigated the era's stringent regulations by disguising alcohol sales under medicinal labels. His strategic foresight to stockpile whiskey prior to the repeal of Prohibition in the United States positioned Seagram to swiftly capture the pent-up demand for quality spirits, drastically altering the landscape of the liquor industry. However, it was in 1928 that Samuel's vision led to the acquisition of Joseph E. Seagram & Sons, a move that fortified his company's market position. This acquisition was a prelude to broader expansion, which saw Seagram extend its reach into wines, rums and whiskies, establishing a formidable global footprint. And parallel to Samuel's business exploits, his wife, Sadie Rosner Bronfman, championed philanthropic causes. She played a pivotal role in the Young Women's Hebrew Association in Montreal, enhancing its programs and supporting Jewish women's empowerment. Sadie's efforts extended to founding the Canadian Youth Aliyah and supporting the arts, notably through what became known as the Siegel Center. As time went on, in the 1930s, Samuel's ability to stockpile resources and redefine whiskey from a bootlegged good to a premium product marked a significant evolution in the industry. He introduced rigorous standards for bottling and quality control, fostering a new level of consumer trust and brand loyalty. Then, the era following World War II was marked by strategic growth through acquisitions and diversification. Seagram expanded its portfolio, engaging in collaborations with European liquor brands and entering new markets like rum. This period therefore solidified Seagram's status as a powerhouse in the global beverage industry. Then, a defining moment in Seagram's history, and indeed in modern architecture, was the construction of the Seagram Building in New York City in 1958. At a construction cost of $41 million, it was the world's most expensive skyscraper at the time, setting a benchmark for office towers worldwide and leaving an enduring legacy in architecture and urban planning. However, the life of family patriarch and the living embodiment of their success, exemplified in the Seagram's building, was only just the beginning of this old money dynasty's expansion into massive wealth. Edgar Miles Bronfman Sr. was born on the 20th of June 1929 in Montreal, Quebec, and entered the world as a scion of the by then very prominent Jewish-Canadian Bronfman family. Under the roof of Samuel Bronfman and Sadie Rosner Bronfman, the household vibrated with the rhythms of Jewish tradition. Kosher meals were not merely eaten, they were ceremonies of faith, and weekends echoed with the teachings of their heritage. Yet, Edgar and his younger brother Charles were pupils of two worlds, their weekdays spent in private Anglophone schools, absorbing lessons in chapels and navigating diets alien to their upbringing. His academic pursuits in Canada were rigorous and continued at Williams College in the United States, but the call of home brought him back to Montreal, where he completed a bachelor's degree in commerce at McGill University in 1951. And the Bronfman estate in Westmount, where Edgar grew up, was a fortress of luxury, staffed with a butler, a cook, 3 maids, a laundress, a gardener, a chauffeur, and 2 nannies. Despite this opulence, Edgar recalled a home life marked by a palpable emotional void, a glaring contrast to the material abundance that surrounded him. This juxtaposition of emotional scarcity against the backdrop of financial wealth profoundly shaped his adult life, culminating in a poignant return to his roots and emergence as a pivotal figure in Jewish philanthropy. And Charles Rosner Bronfman, Edgar's younger brother, shared a similar upbringing. Born in June 1931, also in Montreal, his formative years echoed Edgar's, rich in privilege and expectation. Charles's educational path mirrored Edgar's, culminating in a Bachelor of Arts in Economics and Political Science from McGill University. Soon, Edgar assumed his destined role in Seagram, the family's distilled beverage empire, becoming its transformative leader, president, treasurer, and CEO from the 1950s through the 1990s. Joining the company in 1951 and quickly taking charge of its US operations in 1953, he initiated a period of aggressive expansion and diversification. Under his stewardship, Seagram not only broadened its product range, but also ventured into wines, champagnes, and cognac, significantly diluting its dependency on whiskey. This strategic diversification was highlighted by the acquisition of Tropicana products in 1988, propelling Seagram into the non-alcoholic beverage market. Moreover, Edgar's vision led to lucrative investments in non-traditional sectors, such as a significant stake in the chemical behemoth DuPont. This venture not only diversified Seagram's portfolio, but also underlined Edgar's capacity to identify and capitalize on opportunities outside the traditional liquor market. During his tenure, Seagram's influence was unmatched in the distilled spirits market in the United States, with 1 in 3 alcoholic beverages consumed in the 1950s being produced by Seagram. Charles, not to be overshadowed, also made substantial contributions to Seagram, joining the company in 1951 and ascending to roles of increasing responsibility. In addition to his corporate achievements, Charles's tenure as chairman of the Montreal Expos brought Major League Baseball to Canadian soil, marking another notable chapter in his diverse career. His business endeavors in Israel, like the expansion of the Supersol grocery chain and the acquisition of Core Industries Limited, further showcased his business prowess and dedication to growth and innovation. However, with great power comes not only great responsibility, but also great scrutiny, and the Bronfman legacy has had much of it over the decades. Despite their monumental philanthropic efforts and prodigious business acumen, the Bronfman family's association with the Mega Group adds another layer to their story. Founded in 1991 by Charles Bronfman and the recently controversial tycoon Les Wexner, this informal assembly of influential Jewish entrepreneurs included Hollywood director Steven Spielberg and Seagram chairman Edgar Bronfman Sr. Meeting biannually, they discussed philanthropy and Jewish affairs, significantly impacting initiatives like Birthright Israel and the Partnership for Excellence in Jewish Education. But speculation and controversy have always trailed the Mega Group, particularly due to its alleged ties to intelligence operations. Reports suggest the group maintained contacts with Mossad, potentially influencing US foreign policy in the Middle East. These allegations imply that the Mega Group might have served as a covert base for intelligence activities within the United States, though solid evidence remains elusive. And the involvement of Jeffrey Epstein, a financier notorious for his criminal activities related to sex trafficking, further complicates the Bronfman history. Epstein's close association with Les Wexner, a Mega Group founder, is particularly troubling. Wexner hired Epstein as his financial manager, granting him significant control over his financial affairs, including essentially gifting Epstein his notorious New York townhouse mansion, and giving power of attorney and a board position at the Wexner Foundation to Epstein. Furthermore, Epstein reportedly used his connections within the Mega Group to create a network of high-ranking contacts in business, media, and politics. Epstein's ties to the Mega Group have fueled suspicions about his potential involvement in intelligence operations. Yet, the Bronfman legacy is not solely defined by controversy. Charles Bronfman, Samuel's progeny, furthered this benevolent heritage by co-founding Birthright Israel in 1999 alongside Michael Steinhardt. This initiative, aimed at fortifying Jewish identity and continuity, offers young Jewish adults from around the globe a complimentary 10-day sojourn to Israel, strengthening their bonds with their heritage and the Jewish state. Since its inception, Birthright Israel has welcomed over 850,000 participants from 68 countries, fundamentally altering their connection to Jewish culture and Israel. Research indicates that Birthright Israel significantly boosts Jewish identification among youths, cementing its reputation as a pivotal Jewish cultural experience. And Adam Bronfman, standing on the shoulders of his forebears, continues to weave this familial narrative of philanthropy with a focus on Jewish learning and community building. As president of the Samuel Bronfman Foundation, named for his grandfather, Adam champions religious pluralism and Jewish education. His tenure has seen significant expansions in Jewish learning and community outreach programs, particularly through his involvement with Hillel International and the creation of Hillel chapters in places like Santa Barbara and Utah. Further, Adam has actively engaged in the growth of Temple Har Shalom in Park City, Utah, funding its construction and endowing a rabbinical chair in honor of his grandmother, Saidi Rosner Bronfman. His dedication also manifests in his critique of divisive religious policies in Israel, advocating for a more inclusive Jewish practice across various denominations. And yet, the pendulum swing of shadowy connections and public-facing philanthropy in the Bronfman family doesn't stop simply with Megagroup or their work with Israel. As we'll see in the next chapter, family members have also been both the victims and the perpetuators of some of the most salacious crimes. In the summer of 1975, a sinister plot enveloped the young heir of the Bronfman legacy. Samuel Bronfman II, just 21 and an heir to the Bronfman fortune, vanished in a dramatic incident that captivated the nation. On August 8th, after a seemingly ordinary dinner at his father's residence in Yorktown Heights, New York, Samuel departed alone in his vehicle. As dawn broke, the Bronfman household was shaken by a chilling phone call. Samuel, with a tremor in his voice, announced his abduction. The perpetrators, Mel Patrick Lynch and Dominic Byrne, were merciless, and they demanded an unprecedented ransom of $4.6 million, threatening to kill Edgar Bronfman Sr. with cyanide-laced bullets if their demands were unmet. Samuel, they claimed, lay buried with a limited air supply, a macabre countdown ticking away. The media seized upon the story, transforming it into a spectacle that drew throngs of reporters and the morbidly curious to the Bronfman estate. Despite the kidnappers' desperate pleas for silence, the public thirst for details only intensified. For days, Edgar Bronfman Sr. dutifully followed their cryptic instructions, navigating from one payphone to another in the vicinity of John F. Kennedy Airport. On August 16th, the crucial exchange occurred. Edgar met one of the criminals in Woodside, Queens, handing over half of the ransom, $2.9 million, while the FBI watched from the shadows. They traced the getaway car to Lynch's apartment in Brooklyn, but chose patience over immediate action. The next day, law enforcement struck. They stormed Lynch's apartment and found Samuel Bronfman, a sight to freeze the blood, bound, gagged, and blindfolded. Lynch and Byrne were promptly arrested, but the trial that followed was a bitter pill. The defense painted Samuel as a willing participant in his own kidnapping. This twist, seeding doubt, led to their acquittal on kidnapping charges, though they were convicted of extortion. The verdict left the Bronfman family feeling abandoned by justice, the accusations against Samuel leaving scars that would never heal. Years passed, and the Bronfman legacy grew even more tangled. Sarah and Claire Bronfman, heiresses to the Seagram's liquor empire, became entangled with alleged cult Nexum in the early 2000s. Sarah's introduction to Nexum came via a family friend in 2002 during a period of existential searching. She swiftly became enamored with Keith Ranier's so-called self-help group, plunging deep into its folds and persuading her sister Claire to join her. Their father, initially intrigued, grew wary upon discovering Claire's massive loans to Ranier, eventually branding Nexum as a cult. Sarah's role, while significant, was largely behind the scenes, providing financial support and participating in Nexum's inner circle. Her dedication persisted even as allegations of abuse emerged. In 2019, she severed her ties, relinquishing her stakes in Nexum properties in a complex financial arrangement, but her involvement left a lasting impression. Claire's involvement, however, ran deeper and darker. She sought personal redemption within Nexum, becoming one of its most fervent supporters and financiers. Her contributions, estimated at $150 million, funded legal battles against Nexum's detractors and even Ranier's private jet expenses, and this devotion led to her downfall. In 2019, Claire pled guilty to charges related to harboring illegal aliens for financial gain and fraudulent identification use. Despite her plea, Claire's loyalty to Raniere and Nexum remained unshaken. The court, however, saw through her facade. In September 2020, Claire was sentenced to 6 years and 9 months in prison, exceeding prosecutors' recommendations, and the judge condemned her use of wealth and status to intimidate and retaliate against Nexum's opponents. Yet, even behind bars, her steadfast support for Raniere continued to provoke controversy and fascination. The Bronfman name, once synonymous with opulence and philanthropy, now bore the stigma of scandal and crime, a stark transformation under the relentless scrutiny of public and media alike. And yet, even with all of the controversy, their next generations have continued on from success to success. We'll see in the next chapter. Stephen Bronfman, a luminary of Canadian commerce and heir to the storied Seagram Empire, has become a central figure in the political landscape of Canada, particularly with the Liberal Party. And his influence was especially prominent from the early 2000s to the 2010s, a time marked by his deep political engagement. The pivotal moment in Bronfman's political story occurred in 2013, when Justin Trudeau, then a hopeful for the leadership of the Liberal Party, enlisted Bronfman's support. Bronfman utilized his expansive network and financial acumen to secure crucial funds for Trudeau's campaign, and his efforts were integral to Trudeau's victory and his ascent to the Prime Minister's office in 2015. With Trudeau in power, Bronfman was appointed chief fundraiser for the Liberal Party, charged with rejuvenating its financial structure. His role was explicitly non-voting, centered solely on fundraising efforts, a point emphasized by party officials to quell any speculation about his influence over policy. However, 2017 brought controversy for Bronfman through the Paradise Papers scandal. The documents revealed his and his associates' use of offshore havens, suggesting that millions were channeled through the Colbert Trust in the Cayman Islands by Bronfman's firm, Claridge. These revelations ignited discussions on potential tax avoidance, though Bronfman and his team maintained that their actions were legal and fully compliant with existing laws. Despite these challenges, Bronfman maintained significant sway within the Liberal Party, and his long-standing friendship with Trudeau and their mutual support cemented his status as a crucial player in the party's fundraising success. Their close relationship was evident in their public appearances, from personal milestones like Trudeau's wedding to prestigious events such as state dinners with foreign dignitaries. Meanwhile, Edgar Bronfman Jr., another scion of the Bronfman family, made unforgettable marks on the music industry during the 1990s. As head of Seagram, Edgar was not satisfied with overseeing the family's liquor business alone, and he soon envisioned transforming Seagram into a significant entertainment conglomerate, particularly within the music sector. This vision led to the landmark purchase in 1995 of an 80% stake in MCA Records from Matsushita for $5.7 billion, a sum far surpassing Sony's expenditure on CBS Records in the previous decade. This acquisition heralded Seagram's foray into the music industry, with Edgar quickly rebranding MCA Records as Universal Music Group, or UMG, which would come to dominate the global music scene. Under Edgar's leadership, UMG was reinvigorated by strategic acquisitions, including the monumental purchase of Polygram in 1998 for $10.4 billion. And despite the digital revolution and declining physical album sales, Edgar remained an optimistic proponent of streaming and subscription models, anticipating their potential to revolutionize music distribution and ensure industry growth. Under his stewardship, UMG flourished, navigating the competitive landscape of the music industry and adapting to the digital age, securing its position as a titan in the realm of global music. Similarly, Benjamin Bronfman, born in 1982, had musical inclinations that took a notable turn when he crossed paths with Kanye West. Collaborating with West, he co-produced tracks like Monster from the Grammy-winning album My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy and contributed to New Slaves, the lead single on West's Yeezus, a work that garnered a Grammy nomination. But Bronfman's entrepreneurial zeal wasn't confined to music. In 2007, his environmental interests were on display when he co-founded Global Thermostat with Graciela Cichilniski, an economist. This venture focused on developing technology to capture carbon dioxide directly from the atmosphere. By 2010, they had realized their vision with a pilot plant at the Stanford Research Institute, marking a significant step in the fight against climate change. In 2018, Bronfman diversified his business interests by founding DGH, an investment firm targeting the burgeoning medical cannabis industry. He also took on a directorial role at Bedrocan International, a European company specializing in pharmaceutical-grade cannabis. These days, his investments span various sectors, from technology startups to real estate, collectively amassing a net worth of $100 million by 2024. Similarly, Hannah Bronfman, born in October of 1987, also in New York City, carved her own investment niche, leveraging the Bronfman family name. Armed with a degree from Bard College, Hannah invests early-stage ventures intersecting wellness, beauty, and technology, such as Kindbody, topicals, and poppy seed health. Beyond her entrepreneurial endeavors, much like other millennial and Gen Z Bronfmans, Hannah has made her mark as a DJ, captivating audiences at high-profile brand events for Bulgari, Dior, and Fendi. Thus, from their humble origins, tilling the soil as struggling farmers, the Bronfman family first leveraged hotels. Then, by using that excess cash to buy Seagram, they not only dominated the alcohol industry, but also ultimately expanded their empire into entertainment and finance, shaping a legacy of unparalleled global impact in the end. The ultra-wealthy families of the English-speaking realm don't just influence their own backyards. They command power that leaps continents and oceans, turning the West into a playground of prestige and influence. Picture a family whose influence spans from North America's bustling metropolises to Europe's quaint cobblestones, taking it old school and ruling over a domain not in the fast-paced worlds of finance or technology, but in the everyday essentials of food and retail. In today's episode of Old Money Luxury, join us as we investigate a multi-billion-dollar dynasty that has perfected the art of feeding nations, turning foodstuffs into gold mines, on the way to not only becoming one of Canada's richest families, but for many years the richest family in Ireland, as we describe the Westons, the Canadian family that bought Ireland. Wealth, riches, money. Such basic words do not properly encapsulate the sheer wealth that the Weston family possess, because, in terms of pure numbers, there are but a handful of people who own more than the Westons. With a combined net worth of £14.5 billion, or just over $18 billion, they place 7th on the United Kingdom's Sunday Times Rich list. Thus, the Westons are regarded as the third wealthiest family in Canada, and until 2018 were renowned as the richest family throughout Ireland's deep history. And the beating heart of this endless wealth is found in the family's primary asset, its stake in Associated British Foods, or ABF for short. This parent organisation owns major subsidiaries such as Primark, a clothing retailer that no British high street would be complete without, as well as other popular brands such as British Sugar and Twinings. As of 2024, this mammoth conglomerate ABF is worth the best part of $20 billion. In a recent financial statement, the Weston family revealed that they own a 56.2% holding in this company. So, to say that this holding is a significant one in the family's portfolio is an understatement. However, the Westons are not just invested in tea bags and T-shirts, as they also have an illustrious real estate portfolio. A decision to purchase Canada's Real Estate Investment Trust in 2018 allowed the Westons to expand their real estate portfolio to over 752 properties, a number which will only increase with time. Such properties are not high-rise buildings and penthouses, as you might expect. Rather, it is primarily comprised of a less flashy, yet more profitable sector, grocery stores. This strategy has allowed the Westons to acquire sought-after property in Canadian cities, exposing them to the financial returns of the booming Canadian property market. And the icing on this cake, made of gold, is the family's holdings in Fortnum & Mason, a luxury department store situated at the heart of London. Acquired fully in 2001, this luxury store adds around £49 million, or $62 million, to the Westons' net worth. However, the ownership of Fortnum & Mason is so much more than financial. It adds a certain old money status to the family name that simply cannot be purchased. As you can see, therefore, the wealth, reach and influence of the Westons is unparalleled. The family has a footing in every corner of the globe, and whether you are buying a T-shirt from Primark in Britain or a pizza in a Canadian grocery store, you're only adding to the bank balance of the Westons' expansive empire. But how does a family acquire more money than it could even count? To answer this question, we must travel back in time to 19th century New York. Now, to many, the year 1864 brings to light the turmoil of the American Civil War. Yet, in the heat of such destruction, the foundations of an everlasting legacy blossomed with the birth of George Weston on the 23rd of March 1864. Though born in America, George's parents were actually English immigrants who primarily resided in Toronto, Canada. And upon the birth of George, the family quickly relocated to Toronto. Now, being born the son of two immigrants who had a total of 8 children to provide for, early financial security is not exactly guaranteed, to say the least. And while the city of Toronto was bustling with business opportunities, the Weston family struggled to keep their finances afloat. As a result, George Weston received a minimal education at Wellesley Street Public School, before leaving at just 12 years old to find work and provide vital income for the family. Perhaps, in the 21st century, the idea of a 12-year-old seeking full-time employment in Toronto is comical, if not heart-wrenching. Yet, in a situation as financially perilous as the Westons faced, such was the only option. And so, before he was even tall enough to look over the counter, a young George Weston found employment at a local bakery. Taken under the baker, Charles J. Frogley's wing, George learned everything about the bread-making industry over the following years. He soaked in knowledge as a sponge soaks water, and despite his young age, began whirring business ideas around his head in a desperate attempt to help his family to achieve some sense of financial security. Several years later, Weston moved on from his original job working inside a bakery to a new position in which he began to deliver bread. By delivering bread, instead of sitting inside a shop all day, Weston was able to talk to new people, absorb their ideas, and learn invaluable sales strategies that would later form the core of his business ventures. And, through continued hard work, Weston was also able to build up a small savings, which, in 1882, he used to purchase a bread delivery route, formally establishing George Weston Limited. This venture allowed Weston to dramatically improve his earning potential, and though he started with just one route and one wagon, Weston continued to work and earn until he was able to purchase another route and another wagon. 2 wagons turned to 4, 4 turned to 6, and by 1884, Weston was able to purchase the bakery he previously worked at. This was the turning point for George Weston, and ultimately the Weston legacy. Using his hard-earned experience in the industry, George sought to exploit a gap in the market and expand into wholesale bread distribution. You see, come the turn of the 19th century, the days of individuals baking their own bread, especially in big cities like Toronto, were coming to an end. People no longer had the time to bake bread from home, yet still wanted to enjoy a freshly made loaf. Toronto had a need, and George had the technical savvy and the resources to fulfill this need. And so, in 1897, George relocated his business to a larger, 2-story building and employed Henry Ford-style production line techniques to create a bread-making factory dubbed the Model Bakery. At its peak, the Model Bakery employed 40 staff members and could produce 3,200 loaves of bread per day. The move into the wholesale market, to put it lightly, was genius. It took the Westons out of poverty, laid out a blueprint for subsequent business development, and was ultimately the reason why we are even talking about the Westons centuries later. But George Weston was not done yet. Indeed, there were many more hungry mouths to feed outside of the bounds of Toronto. And so, throughout the early 1900s, George began a crusade of expansion. Utilizing train networks, he was able to ship to 120 different cities per day, producing thousands of loaves of bread and making thousands more in profit. He also dipped his toes in the waters of the biscuit market, which proved an instant success. But in 1924, at the age of 60, George Weston unfortunately passed away. His life was one of hard work, poverty and struggle, yet it was also one of growth and tremendous impact. Through 48 years of hustle, he had built an empire that laid the foundations for future generations to come. And there's no doubt that the entrepreneurial spirit that flowed through his veins would be passed on to his children. Now, it was George's eldest son, Garfield Weston, who would ultimately take the brightly burning candle of commerce from his father upon his death in 1924. Born April 3rd, 1898, Garfield Weston was quite literally birthed into his father's business, his mother giving birth in an apartment that lay above George's factory. Garfield quickly grew an appreciation for the business that his father built, but the allure of glory in World War I swiftly dragged him away as he signed up for the Canadian Expeditionary Force in 1917. However, at the time of signing for the military, Garfield was a year below the minimum age requirement of 19. Not wishing to lie about his age, George put him to work at one of his biscuit factories where he cleaned the floors and repaired broken equipment. But it was hardly glamorous work. Yet, while working in these factories, Garfield did gain a sense that the biscuit industry could be exploited to a greater extent. And so, after serving in the military until 1919, Garfield assumed a role as general manager of his father's biscuit factory. Garfield stayed at this position until the death of his father, when he took over as CEO of the company. As CEO, Garfield Weston wanted one thing: expansion. Like many hungry successors, Garfield felt that aggressive growth could only benefit his father's business. And so, fueled by ambition, Garfield worked as relentlessly as his father to supply new customers with bread and biscuits with more efficient production and distribution methods. 4 years later, in 1928, Garfield made the daring decision to take the company public, a clear sign of the future growth. Soon after this monumental decision, Garfield looked to further capitalize on the biscuit market, acquiring a majority share in an Ontario-based confectionery manufacturing biscuit. Yet, come the early 1930s and the rise of the Great Depression, Garfield was faced with a previously unbeknownst problem. The price of wheat in Canada plummeted. Wheat farmers, who were the lifeblood of the Weston's empire, could no longer profitably sell wheat nationally, and Garfield's supply chain lay in jeopardy. However, Garfield Weston was not one to back down from a fight. In fact, he devised a plan to dismantle two birds with a single stone. The plan was simple. Weston would buy bakeries situated in Britain, modernize them, and then import Canadian wheat to them, which he promised would make superior bread than the British were used to. And to say this plan worked would be an understatement, because by 1939, Garfield acquired a total of 30 bakeries throughout Britain. Bakeries that helped to mitigate the effect of the Great Depression and bolster Garfield's already impressive portfolio. Throughout the same period, Weston dipped his toes in American waters, building manufacturing plants in New Jersey, Michigan, and New York. With newfound economic stability, the Western Empire was able to sail the choppy tide of the Second World War with relative ease. However, the jeopardy that the business faced during the Great Depression was still hot on the mind of Garfield, and come the 1950s, he felt it was time to diversify. You see, there comes a point in every entrepreneur's career where the allure of a new market pulls too tightly. For Garfield, this allure was found in the form of the retail sector. Like his father had found a gap in the Canadian market, Garfield felt that, in Britain, there was a distinct lack of nationwide grocery stores. And so, he launched Fine Fare, an all-British grocery store chain that would later be renamed Associated British Foods. Armed with his prior experience, the launch of Associated British Foods was astounding. In approximately a decade, Garfield acquired over 1,000 stores under the ABC brand, as well as popular British brands such as Twinings. It's safe to say that this venture proved almost immediately profitable and would later become the Weston family's predominant source of wealth. However, Garfield Weston's legacy is not one of purely financial contribution, as throughout his illustrious career, this economic titan also sought to bolster his family name through community work and philanthropic ventures. In 1958, for instance, Garfield launched the Garfield West Foundation, a grant-making body that, since its conception, has donated hundreds of millions of dollars to a variety of community charities. However, no candle can burn for too long, and in October of 1978, Garfield Weston took his final breath. His legacy is one of growth, generosity, and immense business strategy. He took the Weston Empire to new heights, and after his death, the third generation had only to gain. The first key figure in the third chapter of the Weston timeline is one Galen Weston. Born in 1940, Galen was, like his father before him, indoctrinated into the family business from a tender age. He worked closely in the company's retail department as an adolescent, but like his ancestors, felt that an expansion into new markets could only benefit the family empire. And so, in 1962, with the approval of his father, Galen made a strategic move to the country of Ireland. Now, perhaps to the uninitiated, a move to Ireland may seem underwhelming in comparison to Garfield's expansion to the US and Britain. However, in the 1960s, Ireland was a land of opportunity. You see, after centuries of relative unpopularity, Ireland was beginning to gain traction in Europe. Galen looked to capitalize on this newfound appreciation for the country, first acquiring a grocery store in Dublin, the country's capital, in 1962. Galen's idea proved extremely fruitful, and so, over the next 3 years, he purchased a further 5 stores. Just 4 years later, Galen added another key holding to the Weston portfolio, acquiring a bankrupt department store which he would rename Penneys or Primark to those outside of Ireland. You simply have to walk down a British town today to see how successful this venture would turn out to be. Now, with Galen being so busy solidifying the Western Empire in Europe, he was unable to assume leadership come the death of Garfield. Thus, the position fell to Garfield's elder son, Gary. Gary was primed to take the reins of the Western Empire, having served as the chairman of Associated British Foods since 1967. As company leader, Gary didn't look for the next big moneymaker. Instead, he preferred a slow burner approach, choosing to consolidate Associated British Foods' foothold in the British market. Such a move proved successful, and by battling fellow rival Spillers, the 1980s saw ABC achieve a 30% market share in the British bread market. In 1991, he further consolidated British presence with the purchase of Silver Spoon, one of the largest sugar companies in Britain that remains on every supermarket shelf to this day. Now, with presence in Britain and Ireland solidified, both Gary and Galen turned their attention to North America throughout the 90s and early 2000s. Galen, for instance, focused his attention on the expansion of the company's retail operations in Canada, primarily through the retail chain Loblaws, which was purchased some years prior. In 2001, Gary and Galen further oversaw the purchase of American-based company Best Foods Baking for $1.7 billion. This move expanded the company's production capability by some 15 manufacturing plants and firmly solidified its presence on American soil. With such booming prosperity in 2003, Galen sought to seriously level up the company's portfolio with the acquisition of Selfridges, a luxury department store chain, for £598 million, or $750 million. This purchase, while later sold by the next generation, marked a significant turning point for the Western Empire. No longer were the Westons bakers, grocery store owners and biscuit makers. No, they were now the proud owners of one of the highest-end department stores in the United Kingdom. The fourth generation of the Weston family therefore stood in a stronger position than any of their ancestors, and the death of Gary in 2002 and subsequent retirement of Galen in 2016 opened the doors for this generation to capitalize on the success of their forefathers. Gary Weston's son, George G. Weston, assumed the position of Chief Executive of ABC in 2005. However, his time on the board has been plagued with tax avoidance schemes, which has only tarnished the otherwise excellent public perception of Associated British Foods. Galen's son, Galen Weston Jr., has faced similar public criticism. Galen Jr. took over as CEO of George Weston Limited in 2016 before assuming a leadership role of Canadian retail chain Loblaws in 2021. However, during this period, Galen Jr. has received criticism for reducing staff wages during the pandemic, when key workers needed every penny they could make. At the same time as reducing his workers' wages, it was reported that Jr. increased his own salary to some $11.7 million. It's therefore clear that he did not inherit the philanthropic nature of his ancestors. Thankfully, Galen's daughter, Alana Weston, has helped to boost rather than detract from her family's legacy. Her career has centered primarily on the growth of Selfridges, which she was first acquainted with in 2004, assuming the role of creative director. During her time on the board, she led the group with staggering efficiency. In 2012, for instance, her immense knowledge of fashion helped the brand to surpass £1 billion in sales for the first time. And after ascending to chair of the board in 2019, the following years saw Selfridges take an active role in improving sustainability. Eventually, in 2021, Thai company Signa Group offered to buy Selfridges for a total of $5 billion, over 6 times what the Westons paid. And with Selfridges gone, the torch has been passed to Jana Kayat and Kate Hobhouse, Gary Weston's daughters, to keep the empire's luxury appeal burning, with the running and operation of Fortnum and Mason. Now Jana Kayat left the board in 2008, leaving Kate to run the company as chairman. Throughout her career, Kate has consistently increased Fortnum and Mason's annual profits and extended its allure as a luxury brand significantly. Kate has likewise emphasized sustainability as well as profits, further bolstering the public appeal of this luxurious retail titan. Ultimately, the Weston legacy is one of unprecedented financial abundance, and the family, through 4 generations, has truly gone from rags to riches and will remain one of the richest dynasties for decades to come.